Hi everybody, this is Mark, the Rambling Toffee. I hope everyone's doing well today. It's been a while. I thought I'd do this video just to give you an update basically on the podcast and everything regarding that. I know a few people have asked when's my next podcast coming out. It's been a while. I think my last podcast was in March. At that time, my wife's nan passed away. So reflection, grieving, obviously, of that when that happened, with the funeral and everything else regarding that. So I decided to take a break, and then this break extended for a lot longer than I was expecting to. And so I thought I'd do a video to update everybody on the podcast and when it'll be back on again and when I'll be doing that. My plan is to do the new podcast at the end of the season, so it'll be reflective of the season, obviously. All the ups and downs, everything else that happened from the season start all the way through to the last game, the season, the future, everything excited about going into the new stadium, all the players who are coming and goings, and all the things that are going to take place over the summer. But also, I thought I'd do this podcast, and I've been thinking about it for a while, do this video, sorry, not podcast, but do this video to reflect, basically, on Goodison Park. And, we're getting very, very close. I think it's 9 days until we play Southampton. If you saw the news today, which is Thursday, the 8th of May, you've probably seen what the plans are and everything else regarding that. I'll get more into that at the end, but I thought I'll give my feelings and my opinions on everything that is Goodison Park. Sad to leave, as many of you will say, but excited and looking forward to going into the new stadium, making that our home and make it feel like our home, because it's going to be our home for how many years to come, and hopefully a successful team we're going to see in the future. So for me, my first sight of everything of Goodison Park was in 1988. That's how long ago it was. I think it was Sheffield Wednesday at home. Obviously, I was in the Gladys Street with my granddad, who was a big Evertonian for many, many years. I've been supporting obviously Everton since '83, so it's currently I'm 49, so you look about 43 years of supporting them from that get-go. My granddad was the one who basically got me into supporting Everton and not following the usual pathway like the typical red cartel and like Manchester United, Liverpool, and all them teams that, who was the bigger clubs at that point in time. Well, then again, Manchester United in the 80s weren't exactly, winning championships at that point. But I digress with that. But basically, I followed my granddad, who supported Everton. He played football semi-professionally in the early days, in the 50s. But he was the big blue. He would go to home and away games, and he brought me for the first game, and it was an experience, because that season, obviously, Liverpool went on to win the title. I can't remember. It was obviously some point in 88, and I think players were leaving. Obviously, Howard Kendall left in 87 after the Championships winning season, and you can just start seeing gradually the team breaking up over time, and the performances were, not as good as they were. But the experience of going there for the first time, being in the Gladys Street, the terracing, the fencing, and my granddad just telling me story after story with his friends who he stood with in the Gladys Street about everything and anything that is Everton Football Club, from the players going way, way back. And it was just passion and the so much passion, and the knowledge and understanding of telling the history, not just of the players that played at Goodison Park, the games and everything else that happened, but that immersed into me, such from an early age. I was only 12, and just feeling that I just wanted to, that's why I knew Everton were my club, and the club that I wanted to be with. I wanted to support through thick and thin. Back in '88, we were still an okay team, a good team, but you can see where it was going as the seasons went on, and the direction, well, how did we get to today? But, the ups and downs, the roller coaster. But that's my experience of my first time there. It was just the people, Evertonians. We can still talk about Evertonians now. Wonderful people, caring people. Their knowledge of football. It's not, it's ingrained in everybody. It doesn't matter how old you are. You just know your stuff, basically. And I just was made welcome. And am I outside because I'm not a Scouser? I'm not from Liverpool. I'm a Cheshire lad. And my granddad, who no longer with us, obviously, he's from Northern Ireland, and he came over to this country. But, just made us welcome and made us feel part of a community and a family. And that's what I always felt from the get-go, from the minute I said, supported the club. But when I came to the game and walked into the ground and, speaking to lots of Evertonians who were obviously great friends with my granddad, and basically the wonderful stories and everything else, as I just say, it's unique, and that's what makes Everton Football Club different from any other club in the Premier League, in world football, to be honest with you. And that experience I'll never forget, and it will always be ingrained in my mind. And then since then, I think, the games that I've been to and the matches I've been to, the ups and downs and everything that is Everton Football Club over that length of time. I'm just hoping that one day, we will be back at the top of that pile and challenging at the top again and actually winning trophies and being that, being that club that it deserves to be. And I'm not saying we're entitled to winning trophies or anything like that, but the standards were set in our history. The standards are there that we are a team, a club that should be at the top end of the table, that should be competing against the best sides, not just in the UK, in England, but worldwide, in Europe and far beyond that way. And so the games that I've seen, sadly, when I've seen them, they have been games that meant that we stayed up, not get relegated. And yes, there was a period under the early times under David Moyes where we were finished mid-table and in the top, top 10, finishing 5th, 6th, and finishing in the top end of the table and getting into Europe and getting close to winning an FA Cup, close to moving, being that top club and being that team and being very close. But that was only that very short period of time. But since then, it's just been wall-to-wall shite. Sorry, I don't care if I swear. It's just been wall-to-wall crap that we've been dished out week in, week out from different teams, different managers, different players, different this, that and the other. So when I think about what was my most memorable game, at Goodison Park, sadly, it's the Palace game and the Bournemouth games. They're the two games that always stick out in my mind more than anything else. I can go back and talk about, the 4-4 draw against Liverpool in the Cup when I went to that game in 1991. I can talk about that. That's a memorable time, memorable experience because of not just the atmosphere and what it felt being in that ground that night, but also how, how that game, it was a cup game, it was important, it was against the Red Shite, it had everything that, you wanted in a game, and the excitement that you get and the atmosphere that generated from it. But when I look at, but that was just a draw in the end, if you want to, it wasn't a win. But when I look at the now, I always think about the Palace game and I think about the Bournemouth game. When somebody asks me, oh, what was the game that, you'll always remember at Goodison? It's two games that secured survival on both occasions. And, the emotions and everything that was in the main stand, obviously, for both of those games, and the emotion and everything that was going through our minds on that day, on those days, it was, wouldn't bear thinking. You're going up, down, like a roller coaster ride. You were 2 down in the Palace game. Second half, you come back and win 3-2. Everything about that just took so much out of me. And it took a while for me to just get over it, because that's what that kind of game had done to me and to many other fans. So it was a very emotional experience. And I just didn't have time to reflect. It was like a shock to go through that. And then at the end of it, it was like more when I was travelling home and, able to reflect. It just took a long time to let it all sink in, understand what had actually happened, and then move forward. And you hoped after that game, because this is what it was, after that game, I hope we move forward. I didn't want to see that again. I wanted us to be mid-table, go further up. I wanted us to grow. I wanted us to be better. But obviously the off-field activities, the owner and everything that is on regarding that just continued on and on and on. And we went further down. And obviously the Bournemouth game, that was touch and go. That was on the last game of the season. And again, it was the same emotions. But this time, it was, when are we going to get a goal? We need a goal, because other games were going against us. And we got it. And that relief when we scored was, again, it was, please just let it end. I don't want to go through this again. And it was like a second time it's happened. And we got through it, and I had more time to process this. But like I said from the previous the experience at Palace, I don't want to go through this again. We go through it again. And then we come into the next season, and it's points deductions and everything else. I can go on. But those two experiences at Goodison showed something that is a memory that I will take to my grave, is that what the atmosphere was and how we got behind the team on both occasions, right from the get-go all the way through to the end. Everybody was right behind it from the beginning, outside the ground, the pyro and everything else, and everything that was going on. That was Goodison, and that was the fans, and that's at its best. And that's Goodison at its best, as much as it was at a very difficult time and a very, very, kind of very struggle with your emotions to get through those two games. But we kept on going, we kept on pushing, we kept on cheering, we kept on singing, we kept on going and getting behind the team, getting behind the players to get the results, to do what they needed to do. And he did on both occasions. And that is a memory I'll take forever with me, that the memory of, as a fan base, as a team, the team and the fan base, all coming together to get us across the line when we needed it the most, at the most difficult of times. And then obviously the season later with the PSR breaches and the struggles that we have with that, and the memories I have with going to games outside the ground with the demonstrations and everything else about that, and about and in the ground doing the demonstrations in the ground, and the support that they put not just behind the team but as a fan base to say, we're going to keep on going. We don't care what you think about us, as against the Premier League and against these people who are trying. It felt like trying to send us down, and we're going to say, no, you're not going to send us down. We're going to keep on battling, and we're going to keep on, and we're going to stay up. Goodison Park and its fans, and the fans in that stadium, everybody come together and generated an atmosphere and a feeling of, a siege mentality that, we're not going anywhere. You're not going to take us down. You're not going to drag us down. You can throw everything you want at us, but we're not going to go down. And when you look at the noise and the atmosphere that it generated on those occasions last season, and how things got through, that is what we're going to take away. And what I'm going to take away from Goodison is those memories of, I hope we take into Bramley-Moore, and it will still be the same. The wonderful work of the 1878s for the the banners and the flags and everything that they did, and the effort that they put in to set these things up, to give that atmosphere. This season, I will reflect on more at the end of the season regarding this season, and what's transpired, with the manager situation, the takeover, the new stadium, obviously getting your seat at the new stadium for next season, and everything, as well as Goodison, obviously, and everything in between, and the motions of what we've gone through this season as well, and to hope that our future is bright now under new ownership, new people coming in, obviously new manager with David Moyes coming back in, hopefully new players coming in, obviously players coming out, all these positive feeling that hopefully as we start next season in a new stadium, that we have a team that in time will be better, more competitive, be a little bit, will improve better than we have done this season, and we'll be stronger for it. And then gradually over time, we'll keep on improving, and we can get ourselves into a position that we can be back in Europe. You never know, be back amongst them further down the line. It might take a while to get to there. Hopefully we'll get the players that we want, that we need to actually enable us to do that. But I'll talk more about that in the podcast at the end of the season, and regarding what's going to happen next on that. But today, as we're 9 days away from the last game at Southampton, at Goodison Park, it's dawning on me more than ever that the minute I walk out that stadium against Southampton after we've had the celebration, why an hour? I wish it was longer than that. I don't know why they're giving an hour after the game for a celebration. Anyway, hopefully we'll find out what's being planned and what's happening. For me, as soon as I walk out that stadium and I walk away to get the bus back into the city, to get on the train to go home, that's when it'll hit me more than anything else, because I know I won't be coming back. And as much as what we hear today, obviously, about the women's team, but maybe moving into Goodison as well, and obviously the stadium is going to be, be a less capacity over when they move in over time. So that's there, but I don't see myself going to watch a women's team. No disrespect to them. It's not, it's just that I'm a season ticket at Everton Football Club, in the new stadium, and that's where I'll be going. And I suppose in some fans' cases who may have not got a chance to get to Goodison, will have an opportunity to actually go to Goodison and watch the women play. I know you never know, the under-21s may play there as well, and it'll be open up for that sort of thing. So watch the space on that. But for me personally, as soon as I walk out the door, I wave goodbye, and it's, that's the end for me. And we move forward, and that's all I can think of is moving forward. One of the other things I'll say before I finish now is the people around me who I've known for as many years. Some I won't see again unless we exchange numbers and get a chance to meet again at Bramley Moor before the game or after the game. We'll have to wait and see on that front, but that's going to be very difficult as well. But as they always say, you move into a new stadium, you sit with new people, you start making new friends, and then you probably end up being there for another 10, 20 years, how long you're going to be at Bramley Moor Dock and, as a season ticket holder, and where it goes from there. So we'll just see that's going forward. But as a reflection on Goodison, it's going to be a very mixed emotional day. I don't think the game's going to have any kind of permutation. Yes, it's there to watch, but I think it will be on the reflections of, how we all feel as we're there, sitting in that seat for the final time, where I've been for the last few years. I'll be taking the seat, obviously, with me, and it's going to be a keepsake for me, and a lot of people around me are going to do the same. And that's my memory that I'll take with me to the day I die. And it'll be passed on to, my family going further down. But yeah, that's my reflection on Goodison. It's going to be a very, very weird day. I think the Ipswich game, in a funny way, was, for me, it wasn't, because I knew I had the Southampton game left. But for a lot of other people around me, it was their last game, and yeah, you can see it with them, that how, they didn't know how to actually take it all in, and it's you wish that you could give them a lot more time in the stadium after that game to just sit and reflect and just take it all in, do what you need to do, and then be able to leave and then know, okay. But we'll have that at when the game's ended, but I just wish I could have more time than an hour. I know you're gonna have to do celebrations and all that sort of stuff, but for me, I just would like to have that moment where I just, I could just think without the noise, and without that noise, I just want a bit of peace, a bit of quietness, quiet time to reflect and say goodbye. On that note, thank you for watching. I'll try and put this onto Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well, if you want to listen to it. But this will be on YouTube later on. Just to mention that the podcast will be back on at the end of the season, as I mentioned. A reflection on the whole of the season, the ups and the downs, the direction we're going, and what my feelings for the new season is going to be, and where it's going to go. So on that note, thank you again for listening to my podcast over the last 2-3 years that I've been doing it. I've always appreciated it, and I will be back stronger than ever at the end of the season and going throughout the summer, as we go and get ready for the brand new season at Bramley Moor Dock, and hopefully with a lot of exciting players and everything else, and see where we go into next season. So thank you again, take care, and I'll speak to you again soon. Take care, bye-bye.